Really good. Okay, so I'm gonna open up with prayer first because I'm not too sure who's heard the first message or who's around for the second one. I'm not sure, so I'm just gonna pray first, and then we'll um start chapter two as I've named it. So Lord, we just thank you, Lord, for tonight, Lord, and I just pray, Lord, that you use me tonight, Lord, and the words that you give me, Lord, will be spoken, Lord, and the message and content, Lord. I just pray, Lord, for everybody, Lord, especially if someone within the group gets a little bit triggered, Lord, by about things I've experienced or what I say, Lord. I just pray, Lord, that you be with them, be with them, and comfort them, Lord, and give them your peace as well, Lord, to help them through this time, and if they need prayer, just we can pray about it afterwards as well, because yeah. So not sure who's I won't ask people to put up their hands to say who was before chapter one or chapter two, but just a little recap, just to say that where I left off last time was all of our family was unsaved, and basically we were involved in some sort of spiritualist church, um in some form of Eastern religion, New Age, whatever you want to call it. That's what we were in. Through the grace of God, um, God saved us through this family that was living across the road, and so that's where I'll pick it up. And I've called this little bit, I'm not sure what half an hour or something. I've called it Divide and Conquer, because I still thought, because at this time we were all brand new Christians, learning Christianity, finding out what it's all about, and not knowing too much about the devil and his plans and his deceit and all that sort of stuff. So in a way, we were a little bit naive and a little bit complacent, I guess would be the word. So after we were saved, we were all pretty happy, going on a merry way with church and every Sunday, and everything looked really great. Not yeah, everything looked really good. We were just like becoming Christian and all that sort of stuff. And my sister at the time got to know this guy, and they were starting to see each other a lot, because I'm only like 16, 17 back then, and they were off seeing each other and being introduced to the family and etc etc. And sure enough, over time, um, they got pretty serious, and they hooked up and got married, and they moved over to Kangaroo Island, and we didn't think much of it, like it looked like a good touristy place. Everything was great, but back then we didn't know that he had ulterior motives, that he used that to isolate my sister from the rest of the family. So that was something that we didn't know at the time, of course, but it was there, and it would fester and unravel as time would play on. But in the meantime, we moved around so much, and we ended up the friends that saved us ended up moving to Port Lincoln, and to look after the sea missions, looking after the sailors from the ships. We ended up going over there, and for 2 week holiday, and without a word of a lie, my dad says, "Right, we're gonna move there to Port Lincoln and retire." So for myself, it was really crushing, because we've finally made we've hit the big thing, the big life. We've got a brand new house, brick house. Everybody's got jobs, everything's really good. And we ended up moving to Port Lincoln. Um, and Dad bought this really old, crappy little stone cottage that it was cold and horrible and wet and all that. And we had to go through the whole thing again of getting to know the new area, getting to know church, getting to know the school, getting to know make friends, getting to know the town. And all this stuff had been weighing on my mind, and it was sort of festering in the back of my mind. All always having to move house, always having to give up friends, and it was bothering me. It was just festering in the back of my mind. And with I don't know, within a few months, my sister and her husband had come up with some sort of a family business, and we ended up moving to Kangaroo Island. And I couldn't believe it because I've moved so many times that as a kid I was just absolutely sick of it. But again, we had to pack up and we ended up moving to Kangaroo Island, and we lived in a caravan this time. So we've gone from a brick house to a cottage, now to this little caravan in an old caravan park on Kangaroo Island where it was cold and windy and wet and horrible. And so this my dad gave money to my sister's new husband and for this so-called venture, this new business that they were going to go into, and it all fell apart. The big dream of everybody working together as one happy family just blew up, just exploded like a nuclear bomb, and the fallout destroyed the family, just destroyed everything. Um, it was pretty bad. The fallout was because I've been dragged to Kangaroo Island and I had a job and all that sort of stuff. Mum and Dad, they got sick of it and they took off to Port Lincoln or somewhere, left me with my sister and all that. Um, and one day I sort of woke up to this massive argument. Sister was going off at my husband. My husband there was going off at her, and he was really angry and quite conniving. He just grabbed the kids, took off, like, and we're like, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna do anything stupid with them? Is he gonna, hit a tree and kill everybody? Or we don't know. So we're panicking and freaking out. Somehow it must have been God that somehow brought him back. Sister got her three kids, and I've got a little 3-speed, the old Holden panel van, the Kangaroo Island car, which are full of rust and holes and all that. So somehow we collected the kids, we chucked them in the back of the panel van. We flew around to Cape Jervis, which is where the ferry is. We bought tickets and we basically hid down a side street. We waited for the last minute so we could actually escape the island, drive onto the ferry, and then the door went up, and then we were safe. Then we had to drive all the way from Cape Jarvis all the way to Adelaide to see my mum and dad, and then it really got bad. Then there was another nuclear bomb because of the fallout and the arguments and Chris the way he was teaching. It was just shocking, absolutely shocking. So basically, long story short, we ended up going back to Port Lincoln. So we did a big full circle, leaving, leaving and moving back, and we ended up in a caravan into a little flat, and then back into a housing trust house. So it like where God was, I had no idea. I as a new Christian and watching my family just be disintegrated before your own eyes. The fallout, the arguments, the tension, the yelling, and all of that stuff, loss of money. It was just absolutely horrendous. Like it's just devastating. Um, so then we tried to pick up pieces and tried to pick up our old lives, which sort of just didn't work. Um, and then I'm not sure really what happened, but my dad packed my bag and sent me off to Darwin. Um, and I felt like he was just trying to get rid of me so he could try and sort out the marriage and the family, but no one really ever found out why. But I was sent 3,000 k's to Darwin. Just got out of high school. I had to move in with some friends. And that's where, and when all that festering and anger and everything that I'd felt towards my parents sort of manifested and blew up, and I sort of, like, I guess I just let loose a bit. I would say I did things I thought I would never do. I ended up going to nightclubs and hanging out at nightclubs. I even went to the Darwin casino. I even tried some marijuana. I went to church, stoned off my face. Tried drugs and stuff. I met friends like the street kids. Um, I just did anything and everything I could that I rebelled. So that, I guess you could say I just rebelled and did anything that I thought would hurt my parents. You know what I mean? And I even got married, which, to my surprise, I even got married. I might have not married the right girl, but it was just everybody was high on emotion and all the stuff that goes with it, and got sort of, yeah, and being got married. Mum and dad didn't come up for the wedding. They didn't want to know anything about it. They just turned the cold shoulder, I guess you could say, and I was left to my own devices with the marriage and everything. Mum and dad, my sister, they'd sort of worked out the differences and all that, and far out. Somewhere along the line, they bought this, moved to Clare and bought this really busy takeaway shop, and they were pretty busy with that. And then my dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor size of a golf ball. He had to go to hospital and recovery and all that stuff. And that's when we were asked to move down, and we was told that we would move down and then go back to Darwin. So we left all of our wedding presents, all of our gifts, my car, everything was left there, thinking that we'd be back in a month, a few weeks, whatever. But that wasn't to be. Um we sort of got stuck in Clare, I guess, through my family and their level of control and manipulation. We were stuck there, working in the shop and everything. But that's when I found out. Well, my new wife was admitted that she'd had been actually seeing somebody behind my back in Darwin. Um, so that really rocked me because I wasn't expecting anything like that. And that's when I believe the first signs of depression sort of came onto me, which is a thing that sort of manifested fully later. But I was so scared, and because I knew what my mum and dad were like and how they would react. So I tried to play it cool and calm. But my ex, I'm not sure why, whether she was naive or being stupid, she told my mum and dad, and that was it. She was ostracized straight away. They didn't want to know her, they didn't talk to her. I was basically the black sheep of the family. I was sort of tolerated, but that's about it. I was basically ignored, I guess, by the rest of the family. After that, I still worked in the shop, but that was it. I wasn't a son. I was just the employee. You know what I mean? Like that was about that happened. Um, After that, the shop sold, and we moved out into a housing trust house, and um, no, I guess that's where the other signs of mistrust started to manifest, and my ex became violent, and things just started just to go off the deep end a bit. But because we were at church, and you know how so back then you had to put on a bright face and make sure that everything was still great, and you're all playing happy families. So all of that tension and strife and anger was sort of buried and pushed down and pushed down and pushed down, and when something happened, you'd get on top of it and you push it down even further deep inside you, and then you try to play happy families some more, and just carry on a bit more and a bit more. So and then, yeah, things. we're going along sort of okay, but the emotional for me, the emotional side was inside of me was really getting quite bad. It was building up and building up and building up. We moved to another house because of the trouble we had, but by then we sort of had kids, thinking the kids would make things better, and it didn't. It just made things worse. So now I was by myself, sort of flying by the seat of my pants. Um, in the church, things seemed to be all right. We were quite busy with the church. I put everything into the church, trying to be a good Christian and trying to be a good example. We started a large kids group on a Saturday. I started a young adults group, which was really good. Even started to mix sound for the group, more doing both services, doing all the sounds. And then I even started church ministry, certificate four in church ministry with back then it was called Paradise. Um, Everything seemed got to be all right. I got to the last subject, and then the depression hit. And at first, I just didn't know what it was. I just found myself in a black hole with no way out. It felt pretty bad. It was bad. I was on a just a downward spiral. I'm not sure what if people have been into with depression, but yeah, I was on a downward spiral. I had no energy. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't function as a father. I couldn't like look after the kids. Um, I started to hear voices. I was suicidal. I tried to kill myself 3 or 4 times. I had major anxiety, panic attacks. I'd have panic attacks in church. I would have panic attacks doing shopping. It was it was crazy. It was like I don't know. It's just like with the worst nightmare, I guess you would say it was. And one Sunday, I went to church to do the sound, and I just had a malfunction. I just spat it. I just said to the pastor, "That's it. Not doing anything. You can stick your church, stick everything I'm doing, and that's it. I'm not doing anything." So it was quite they were quite shocked. Eventually um I ended up going to the doctors, getting medication, being medicated, all that sort of stuff, which took the chill off of everything, but the depression, everything was still there, but it was just manageable. But my wife, well, my ex-wife back then, she was starting to manifest and becoming quite bipolar, and her mood swings were coming up and down, and she was coming quite violent, and she was spending money and hiding bills. She was before she was smoking and drinking in private, and then as time went by, she sort of was doing it in public. It was quite, yeah, in parties, and I would find big bills of thousands of dollars of things that I thought had been paid and hadn't been paid. Were basically suffering physically and mentally to where, yeah, the police and everything were finally brought in. Um, so I was really beside myself in such a situation that I just couldn't function mentally or anything. And some of the times that when you're in actually in the deepest, darkest hole, that's when God would actually speak to me. Like I one day I was in a bad position and I walked out of the house and I was out walking around, and God said to me, clear as a bell, all right, you've had your cool down time. It's time to go back. So, and I argued with God, and I ended up going back home, and that happened twice, and then it happened again. But on the third time, be, well, basically the third time was it. She had given me the ultimatum, basically kicked me out of the house. I'd actually packed my car, and I sort of gave her one last chance, to come clean about all the stuff that you'd done behind my back. And I said, I'm leaving and I'm going. And that time, God said, God didn't say to go back. It was my open door and my ticket out. And I took it and I never looked back. That's not to say that I was still suffering with depression, anxiety. I was homeless. I was living in my car, hardly any money, living rough, all that sort of stuff. And through welfare, somehow I got a unit and all that sort of stuff. And then somehow we both met. Um, and it was quite a opposites. Like Michelle was outgoing, always liked to go out for tea and coffee, always liked to live the high life as I saw it, where I'd be hiding in my little flat with the doors locked and the shades down and looking outside, making sure no one's after me. And she took me to this restaurant type place, and she's having a meal and everything, and she's all happy and chatty, and I'm sitting there absolutely freaking out because of my anxiety, because like through my exes, the way she'd been treating me, like us and the kids we're not good enough to go out. We were not good enough to socialize, like to enjoy ourselves. It was, the way she'd treated us. I felt really guilty, and inside I'm just like a quivering bowl of jelly because I just couldn't handle the anxiety was so bad. And when I got outside afterwards, I just basically fell in a heap because it was just way too much. So it's been an up and down bit of a roller coaster ride. Um, Somehow, like through the church, the pastor um was pretty was she was great. She was understanding. She took me under my wing, um, and started some serious prayer, one-on-one prayer, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not sure about if anybody knows all about prayer and deliverance, but she said, you want to get set free from this stuff, and sure, he doesn't want to live with voices in your head telling you kill yourself and you're useless and you're a waste of space and you'd be better off dead and no one's going to miss you. But that's where I was at. So I went into prayer, and we had prayer every few weeks, and she started praying off all this stuff, praying against so many like different things, and slowly I was sort of coming out of the depression, and I could actually see for once that there was a bright light. That I actually had a chance of becoming normal. But she said to me after I don't know how many months of serious one-on prayer that God said that that's enough for now. You need time to recover and regenerate and get back into church life and start um just redrawing back on your strength again and all that. So I was happy, but I was a bit devastated because I thought I was a bit like a dog with a bone. I wanted to be healed right there, right then, and I wanted everything done. But she said no. It's a process, and it can be quite draining physically and spiritually on a person. So I was still a bit angry with her whole thing. But then what? A few months later, I was introduced to somebody else, and who took over the ministry of deliverance and everything, and the suicide was gone, the depression was gone, um, things were going, and the voices were going in my head, and it came to a point where everything was gone in my head, and there's only my voice and my voice alone, my thoughts in my head, and the rest was quiet. And that took me a while to recognize, because my head was being full of voices constantly, and for once my head was quiet, and I make the joke that my head used to echo because it was so empty that there were no other voices in my head telling me what to do, and I could just sit there quiet and it'd be all quiet. I know for some people it'll be hard to understand, but if you've been through depression and the voices and all that, you probably understand. But all that disappeared, and then that session came to an end, because I've been through a lot of prayer and all that, and I felt like after each session it was quite demanding, and you feel like you've been through a wash machine or you've been hit by a bus. It was that bad, I guess. But and then months later, we left the area. We moved to Snowtown, and it was a bit like the wilderness, like for me, because we're out in Snowtown and there's no churches and there's no ministry. And I'm thinking, God, you've started this thing, and now you've left me out to dry. Like, what happens now? So I put up with it, and you go through all your different emotions of being angry and frustrated with God, and what are you doing, God? Have you dropped the bundle? What's going on? And then we moved to Port Broughton, and we came to this other church, and they were really big on deliverance, and just happened again. Like, went back into the depression and the prayer and cutting things off me and getting rid of all that rubbish that had been hanging on me. And it continued for what, another year, I think, didn't it? Another year of weekly praying and all that. Even just going to church, stuff would be broken off of me. Even when I wasn't expecting it, stuff would come off of me, and in the worship, and uh, um like from where I used to be back then to where I am now. I'm still in a work of progress, but so much has come off of me that I'm out of the hole, like out of that depression hole that I used to be in, and I'm just not the same person anymore. The things that controlled, I've been set free of. I've gained the upper hand through God's grace and power and strength. Um, Thought life has changed. Life patterns have which I thought would never be broken. God's changed, fixed, healed, got in there with the hammer and wrench, and really got in right inside this, into the spirit, and really changed stuff, and into the soul, and really fixed, removed a lot of garbage, a lot of resentment, a lot of hurt, a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, um, all of that stuff, all that baggage that had accumulated and attached itself. God's just, sliced it all off layer by layer by layer, and it's been quite incredible journey. Um, Definitely hasn't finished, but now I can see the end. Like, the end is in sight, and the prayer life is still a struggle. Reading the Bible is still a struggle, but I've had more victories than um than defeats, and what God's shown me and how God's works through you, even though you feel like you're not good enough. God just, just God surprises, because like we think about of ourselves as, well, I have, as pretty useless, and the worst of sinners, as Paul says, and you sort of think, oh, how can God use you? Because that's the way I've been, and done it, the stuff I've done. But through God's grace, God's broken that, and uses you, and Yeah, it's crazy. Like how God will pick you up out of that clay, out of that miry clay, and raise you up to where you just don't feel like you deserve to be. So, what's that? Half an hour. I'll leave it at that for now. So, if anybody's got any questions or anything like that, they want to know a little bit more, they can now or afterwards or whatever. Um, yeah, that's pretty a clean version because there's lots of hurts from my kids and how my kids have been treated and their life stories. So a lot of it has been sanitized, like I guess you'd call it, where a lot of the raw emotions and everything has been removed. I guess because it's just too much for some people where the people are at with their own problems and traumas and all that other stuff themselves. So I'll leave it at that.